How's it going, everyone? It's Harvey from Weather Sponge 1000, and in this video we're going to focus on Tropical Storm Julia, which likely will be developed into a hurricane within the next couple of hours before it makes landfall somewhere along the Nicaragua coast, and we'll determine if it has the possibility of reforming into a tropical storm as it enters the Gulf of Mexico by next week. But before I begin, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather icons. So taking a look at Tropical Storm Julia at this time, we do see a high amount of convection going on surrounding the center circulation. However, we aren't seeing a very small eye wall at this time, which would show that this storm is strengthening and that it has hurricane force winds. It will likely develop hurricane force winds before it makes landfall, and it's currently under low shear and a very moist environment, so it likely will become a hurricane before landfall, but it doesn't have a lot of time to do so, as it only has several hours before it makes landfall. But it will likely become a hurricane and become a major threat for the Nicaragua coast, so you need to stay prepared, especially when it comes to flooding, because you could experience up to 10 inches of rain in localized areas. Now, taking a look at the current wind shear map, we do see that the wind shear is very light right around Central America, which is allowing the storm to have a very nice outflow on the upper levels of the atmosphere, where we're seeing the winds diverge at a fairly good clip for this to continue to have convection and for it to continue to maintain its organization. So it's likely to strengthen into a hurricane before it makes landfall. Now, in terms of the future, this pretty much, of course, it's guaranteed at this point this will make landfall along the Nicaragua coast. We see that the millibar pressure drops down the European model is dropping the millibar pressure down to 991 millibars just before landfall. And if we were to take a look at what the GFS model is stating just before it makes landfall, it's stating that this storm will be a 993 millibar storm right before it makes landfall, and it's going to be a powerful hurricane, and there should be a lot of flooding. Taking a look at how much rain should move through Central America, we see a heavy amount of rain, and your question probably is, will this have a possibility of reforming in the Gulf of Mexico? Well, it seems like that possibility has subsided, because it doesn't seem like the energy will move north enough to really develop into much of anything. And plus, it's going to deal with a high level of wind shear. Of course, we're entering the month of October now, where the upper level winds do become strong, especially throughout the northern Gulf of Mexico. So it becomes a lot harder for low pressure systems to develop under strong wind shear like this. So it's unlikely to develop as this heads into the Gulf of Mexico. However, there's still a possibility things could change, but at this point it's looking less and less likely, and the European model suggests the same thing, where while we do see some rain energy move into the Gulf of Mexico, it doesn't really develop into much of anything, because like I said, the wind shear will be very strong. The conditions will be hostile for any sort of tropical storm to develop, so that will prevent it from really developing. And plus, it doesn't seem like there's going to be enough of a weakness in bridging to steer this up north, and this storm is going to move from further southward than expected, so the energy will more likely than not just hover around land, so it's unlikely to redevelop into tropical storm. But you should be prepared for the possibility of tropical storm to hurricane conditions as this makes landfall somewhere along Nicaragua at this point. Now, taking a look at what the Ensemble members are stating, we do see that pretty much all of them take this towards the coast of Nicaragua and bring this just south of Mexico. So it's unlikely we're going to see this move northward into the Gulf of Mexico, which is definitely good news. We need to see if there will be a stronger weakness in ridging before we could say it'll move northward and have the possibility of redeveloping, but that's unlikely at this point. It'll most likely just stay south of Mexico and maintain tropical storm status off the coast and bring heavy rain all throughout Central America, so you need to be aware of that possibility. Now, taking a look at the model intensity guidance, we do see that quite a bit of the Ensemble members do maintain this at tropical storm strength, but we do have some taking it to hurricane strength. I think a hurricane at landfall is more likely, where it's going to be under favorable conditions for just long enough for it to develop probably into a low-end Category 1 hurricane, but whether there's a strong tropical storm or low-end hurricane, you still should expect conditions very similar to a Category 1 hurricane in Nicaragua. So you need to prepare for major impacts along the coast, and you don't want to underestimate how powerful a Category 1 hurricane could be, since they're easily capable of dumping 10 plus inches of rain and bringing a major flash flood threat all throughout Central America. So you need to be prepared for that possibility. Now, taking a look at the rainfall forecast, you see that much of Central America should expect anywhere from 5 to 8 inches of rain, where we do see that in some areas you could experience up to 12 inches of rain, which is just an excessive amount of rainfall. Flash flooding is likely, and I hope if you're right around a small stream or river, you take the right precautions, because a flash flood threat is likely associated with Julia as it continues to make its way on the coast. And in terms of the long-term future, like I said, it seems like the wind shear and the ridging won't go in its favor when it comes to developing in the Gulf of Mexico, so I'll say it's less likely, which is certainly good news. But Central America, you need to be prepared for major impacts all throughout these countries such as Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Guatemala, and even extending as far north as Mexico. You need to be aware of the major flash flood threat that's in your way. Now, taking a look at my forecast when it comes to potential Hurricane Julia, so I do expect this to make landfall as a hurricane before eventually moving into the Pacific, and at this point the possibility that this reforms in the Gulf is unlikely. The wind shear seems a little bit too strong, but we're definitely gonna be at least aware of that possibility and see if there's any major shifts in the forecasts, because that's still possible between now and 4 days. But at this point, it seems like more likely that it'll stay just to the south of Mexico and bring heavy rain all throughout Central America and major impacts along the coast of Nicaragua. It's Category 1 type impacts, where you could experience life-threatening impacts at times, especially if you're very close to a flood-prone area. So we need to be prepared for major impacts as this heads towards the coast. But anyways, guys, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather content, and I hope you guys have a great day.